Welcome back. In this episode, we're going to be chatting to a good friend of mine, Jennifer. And Jennifer is a teacher. And I think you'll find this episode fascinating because ADHD in teaching is always at the forefront of our minds, because teachers are invariably playing a big part in children's lives, and they are often the first port of call when it comes to identifying difficulties that children have in the classroom. What makes this episode and this more interesting in terms of a teaching perspective is that Jennifer is someone herself who has ADHD. So let's meet Jennifer, and I'll catch you at the end just to wrap up. So thanks, Jennifer, for coming along today. I know you're taking time out of your busy school holiday.
Hard life.
I know it's the time of the year where you like to chill out, and as the weeks move towards the new term starting, you'd like to recharge the batteries again for fully engaging with those young people.
That's it, get my brain engaged again.
Yes.
No more sofa sitting today.
Exactly. So you are a teacher with ADHD.
I am indeed.
And I think I was just saying to you off camera that we see many teachers who have ADHD, and probably like lots of professions where people have ADHD, they tend to be the best at what they do in terms of teaching, probably struggle with other stuff.
Yeah.
So I thought today it would be quite nice just to hear a bit about your journey. I know that sounds a bit cheesy, but your journey.
We're both cheesy, it's all right.
Cheesy, it's the cheesy bit of the show.
Yeah.
Your journey, the ADHD bit, but also your sort of career into teaching, and then you and I know one another from another life, which is
people would never guess.
both actors, believe it or not. Yes, that's right.
This is going to be comedy.
And so we can have a chat about that as well. So, first things first, teaching. How did you get into teaching? How did that come about?
So, it's kind of been one of those things where teaching is, I would say teaching, right, is a job where you kind of always know it's the job you've wanted to go into. So, you can always tell when someone's wanted to go into teaching and they've thought more about the holidays, right? They're the ones that drop out in uni or drop out quite quickly.
So you're attracted to teaching because of the holidays?
Absolutely. No, I'm kidding on. No, believe it or not, we do not have holidays. We only get paid for 10 months. We take 2 months unpaid leave. You can do it too.
Right, okay.
Anyone can do it.
Right, okay.
2 months unpaid leave. Anyway, so for me, it was kind of always growing up, you played schools. It sounds silly, but it meant for me, I was able to see a career that was something I was already used to. Right. If you think about it, you've already been in school for, 13 years? Most people, especially if you go to uni to then do teaching. Yeah. So you're talking about going into a career that is no different from your day-to-day growing up. Now, knowing that I'm ADHD, I can understand why I then found that really appealing. While you quite like a wee bit of a dopamine hit and something unusual for ADHD, you also have this insane self-worth, self-esteem problem, and you overthink things, and to then change or think about what career you're going to go into, you automatically get that fear if it's something too different, something that you're not used to. So for me, originally I was thinking, going into drama or teaching. So, tried for theatre school, things like that, but fell then into actually my path being more teaching, because that was the two things that I'd been doing since I was, 10.
Right.
It didn't seem too scary. It seemed like something that was just how it was. You've done it for 13 years. What's interesting is my auntie would say different. My auntie says that when I decided I was going into teaching, she wasn't surprised, and she tells everyone if I was a stick of rock, you cut me in half, I'd be a teacher the whole way through. I'm like, oh, it's so cheesy, I love it. Like, keep telling people that.
And so then, 'cause obviously, we're talking about your ADHD assessment in a wee bit, but obviously, having ADHD, you've always had it. Mm-hmm.
Just not known.
You didn't know as you were going through your teacher training, and then as you embark on your early days in your career, how did what we now know to be ADHD impact on that?
So I was picked up, especially in my probation year, comments of emotional intelligence or lack of emotional intelligence.
Lack of? What do they mean?
I'm very emotional,
Right.
insanely empathetic, justice driven. So if something's wrong, like I'll be the one that's like, but no, you can't do that. But also not realising that maybe then how I put that across isn't the right way either, or I'm very reactive.
Right.
You know.
How was that received?
Not very well. So I didn't have a very successful probation year, to the extent I was considering leaving teaching.
Was that right?
Yeah. If I hadn't had such a good 4th year placement, knowing that I could do teaching, whereas luckily, luckily, I had that feeling of my 4th year placement, which was in a local school where I live in Kirky. It's now not there. It's such a shame. It was a lovely school, St Agatha's, and it was like a wee house.
Kirky, that'll be Kirkintilloch.
Sorry, Kirkintilloch. It was like this wee house.
Right.
And like the head teacher would phone over and be like, right, Jennifer, I've just put soup on if you're coming over for your lunch. Because I was over in a wee hut in primary 7. And it just was so homely and nice. And that head teacher supported me massively. So there was things, obviously, I still did things wrong. I was learning. I was only a 4th year student. You know, there was a time where I had all the kids out and we were doing digging up and planting seeds, I presume. Can't remember. But we left a mess because I didn't think to clean up.
No.
So typical ADHD, but I didn't know that at the time. And I know that, you know, most kind of leaders would then be like, oh, why have you done this? But, you know, she totally recognised I was a student. My heart was in the right place. And she explained to me how in a school you have to think of like the whole picture before you start. And that changed things for me.
How pivotal or instrumental was this one individual to get you like through that period?
She was amazing because I just kept remembering she wanted to request me for my probation year at one point. And
Why did you want to request you?
I think just because the teacher I'd been in with was having a hard time. She was a fellow thespian, so I just got on with her. I helped her put on the primary 7 show. And she was having a hard time and had to take some time off. So I would take the class.
Right.
And I must have just demonstrated that I was really good with the kids. And we did World War II as our topic. And we had a day where, you know, I made them all their jam sandwiches and their Empire biscuits and came in and I looked like one of the children because we were all dressed up as evacuees. So I was smaller than half of them and dressed up the same as them. So I got lost in there.
P1s?
This was primary 7. Thank you. She did put me in primary 1 though to cover a few times as well because she knew I could do the challenge. And she just kind of filled me with that, I can do this. Like this woman who runs a school is literally allowing me to cover classes for her teachers to do certain things, or instead of getting supply in, if it wasn't needed, she would say to me, listen, see before I phone, do you want to have a wee go at that? Or how do you fancy this? And pushed me out my boundaries a wee bit, but still supportive. She was like your gran.
Yeah.
She was great.
And I think that what you're describing there is very typical for many people who have ADHD, where, you know, they would come here for assessment and you just know that their self-belief is in their boots.
Yeah.
And sometimes if you just know that if they had met someone like this teacher that you're describing, who's maybe giving you the nod to kind of say, it's fine, you're doing all right.
Yeah.
You're good at what you do.
I wouldn't be a teacher if it wasn't for her.
Is that right?
Because my probation year was so hard and I was so misunderstood, because in your probation year, you're not a student, they're your class.
Yeah.
But you still have all the stress. It's not a case of you're the probationer, so we're going to go easy on you. No, you've got a class. You still have all the same stresses as a normal teacher. Yeah, you've got a mentor and a support, but it's a huge jump from being at uni. And then my experience of, you know, being told I was not emotionally intelligent, I was too much, all of these things, plus add in my scattiness, etc. I would have quit teaching if I didn't have my previous head teacher in my head.
Tell me about those, I mean, emotion. I think people with ADHD have tremendous amounts of emotional intelligence, probably too much sometimes.
I now know I do, yeah.
And with those emotions, how tricky were they to manage during that phase?
Looking back, probation, I think now I know I was very much misunderstood. Whereas at the time, you believe when you're told you're not emotionally intelligent, you believe when you're told you're too much. And you do question yourself. And I remember feeling incredibly low. You know, I'd be at school till 7, half 7 at night and going home, and it would be silly. Like, my mum would have made me my dinner, right? To be nice, she'd have made my dinner and I would have absolutely cracked up. I'd have lost it. Because in my head, in the car home, I've thought, I'm so tired, I'm just going to shove on waffles and beans.
Right.
So in my head, I've decided I'm just going to have waffles and beans. And I've come home and my mum's made like chicken and chips or spaghetti bolognese that's in the oven for me. And I have lost it with my mum. Why? Why have you done that? You know, I've decided I was going to have waffles and beans, and now I know that that's exactly what sometimes parents will say to you of like the kids get home from school and they just erupt. So I've obviously all day been trying to fit in. No matter what I was doing, I was not fitting in. So there was something wrong with me, but I didn't know I was ADHD. So I was like, why am I not fitting in? I'm really trying hard.
Were you like that all the way through primary school, high school, you know, holding it together at school, then coming home and the emotion would kind of explode out?
Not so much. I think it was different primary school and high school where my emotions were taken out on my friends.
Right.
Which is why I don't have friends from school.
Oh, really?
They all still think highly of me. I still think highly of a lot of them. I would never pass them in the street. I would go up and give them a cuddle, you know, but we're just not friends because now I know I would have put so much pressure on my friends, especially in high school, when they weren't doing what I needed them to do.
Yeah.
And I didn't understand that what I was asking of them was too much because to me it's not too much.
And is that where your emotions when, you know, those friendships or things that you're hoping for them to do with you, but you know, alongside you, and they weren't doing it, would that trigger your emotions?
Massively. So I would have huge meltdowns at lunchtime. I would always be the one crying in school.
Right.
You know, I was the very dramatic one that would be fighting with people, swearing at people, crying over a boy, silly stuff like that in school that I was just too much for my friends. They just couldn't, you know, it was just too much to have me around, so I wouldn't get invited out to things because there'd always be a drama if I was there, you know, because it's almost as if there was a few of them, especially there was a friend, Karen, that I had in high school, and she was just such a safe person. I don't know what it was about her. She's a teacher now as well, and she's one of the ones that I think if I ever see, it's as if I've never not seen her. She was just such a safe friend, but I remember there was one time where I wasn't allowed to go down the street at lunchtime, and they were all going down the street, but I wasn't allowed.
How come?
And I was first year, my mum would be like, no, you're not going down. Most teenagers would just be like, well, I'm going down, my mum will never find out. But I was like, no, my mum said no, so I'm not allowed to go. I was by the rules, and I remember crying in Karen's face and screaming at her, like, please just stay with me, stay. And Karen was like, but I can't, I've not got money in my card, I'm going down the street, I've said, I'm meeting my friends, like. And I remember holding on to her and like not wanting to let go, and she was trying to walk away to go down the street, and I'm like holding on, dragging her back, and you just think, that poor girl.
Did that lead to people maybe distancing themselves in any way from you?
Emotionally, yeah, but not physically. Like I was still part of the friendship group,
Right.
but I was never the best friend.
Right.
And that hurt a lot because without realising it, growing up, I've learned a lot of social expectations through movies
Right.
because I wasn't picking them up in general.
Is that more like autistic traits?
I think so, which is why I think I might also be autistic, I don't know. That things like, I expect romance to be insane, that, you know, if you get broken up with, you show them your heart. Because when you show them your heart, they will want to make it better and turn up at your house with a jukebox.
And how often did that happen?
Exactly. You know, so that kind of dramatic, fanny-ish side. And it would really annoy my mum and dad, because they would be like, what? Like what world are you living in? And I'm putting these expectations on people, or, you know, you're my best friend, so you don't go out with the guy that I've gone out with.
Yeah.
And now you're texting them like, no, and I cut you off. Because you do things that friends aren't supposed to do.
What
Silly things like that.
What was the cumulative effect of that into your teenage years? And your mental health?
Loneliness.
Lonely?
Massive loneliness. And just wanting to be chosen.
Right.
Which sounds silly, but you just want to be chosen, and that's when I experimented in second year with self-harm.
Right.
But I know this is ridiculous. I can't believe I'm even admitting this, but I know I wasn't doing it for what you would think of, like, you want to hurt yourself, you want to punish yourself, you want to kill yourself. None of that.
Right.
I was doing it as like for a minute, I was the important one.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it was a concern that I was doing it. So the fact that one of my friends, when they noticed it, was like, you need to stop doing that, that's bad. I was like, wow, I matter to them. I've never mattered before, this is insane.
Did that stop the self-harm?
It took them going to a teacher behind my back. But it didn't then last long, because all it took was the teacher to then be like, why are you doing this? And to get upset and maybe embarrassed that I did it, to stop. Because it wasn't a serious... It was serious, that's not what I mean, but it wasn't like the deep-rooted mental health reasons that many people fall into doing that. For me, it was I was really craving just to matter to someone, because I was always bottom tier of the pyramid, right, even into adulthood friendships, you know, friendship groups, I'm always the bottom of the pyramid, I'm never the one that's chosen.
Is that perception accurate, or is that still the case as an adult now? You think?
Yeah. I had a friendship group in my 20s, and they're all still friends and I'm not in it. Even in the club, you know, I find it easier to have like friends from each kind of different group, or to remove myself and kind of take a wee step back. Like, when I'm in a group, I'm very much too much for people, because I have this expectation of people, because I know that I would do it for them. That's a very ADHD thing, of very like people pleasing and my empathy. So I'm very much like, I would do anything for anyone.
But also having ADHD, helping people, being there for people is extremely interesting and rewarding. It's a huge dopamine hit.
Huge dopamine. That's it. So, which is why I would do it. But then I don't have the understanding of why other people wouldn't do that back. But it's because they're not ADHD. They don't need that dopamine hit.
And then that's like an emotional punch in the stomach.
That's it. And that's when you get that rejection.
Yeah.
Major rejection. And it's so complex, because you don't know how to describe that to someone, that you feel rejected because you've got an idea in your head of how it should be, and it's not like that.
How have you helped yourself with that? How have you made that easier for yourself? Now
knowing that I'm ADHD and that it's ADHD that's caused it, giving myself a bit of grace.
Yeah.
I think that's been the thing. I've had to do a lot of self-esteem therapy, and I would still look at going back and maybe doing counselling, just because talking it through with someone, it's very strange. I find for my ADHD, talking through my issues and talking through my problems, by the end of me talking through it, I've almost solved it myself. Right. And that's when I have the wake-up call and the self-realisation of, right, it's not that I'm too much, it's that the demand I'm putting on is too much at the moment, and neurotypical people don't think the same way as me. And so doing a lot of that self-esteem therapy and then just talking therapy has been a game changer.
And is that, fingers crossed, led to you being better at not giving yourself such a hard time? And the flip side of that, are you better acknowledging the things that you've been good at?
Yeah. I'm a big I'm a big advocate for myself now.
Good.
But then that can also then go to the opposite extreme of, well, I won't take no crap.
Well, I think that's fine.
And that's an issue. But then that's also being a woman in your 30s, being more self-assured. And it is very much, I'm precious with my friendships. And the friends that I do have now, it's weird, I don't have this big friendship group. Whereas that was always what I thought you were meant to have. But now I've got 5 friends from kind of different groups, but they are so solid, ride or die.
Yeah.
I can be myself. They can come to my door and I'll not have washed. I'm still in my pyjamas and there's no judgment.
No.
It's great. So now that I'm a bit older and having all that therapy, I do find I can really advocate for myself, and I can go, I can say, I'm really good at that. I'm a boss.
How effective do you think that therapy would have been without knowing ADHD was in the mix?
Oh, that's a good question.
Because a lot of people say to me that they've been to therapy for years and years and years prior to being assessed, diagnosed and treated. And whilst they found the person to be helpful in the sense that it was somebody who could listen, it often didn't really improve the things that they'd gone to speak to
Part
them
of the
about.
jigsaw is missing if you don't know.
Right.
That's the best way to describe it, because I would get really frustrated and I would have conversations then in therapy where I'd be trying to explain maybe an incident that had happened in a conversation with mum and dad, and I was trying to explain why they were wrong. But the therapist couldn't see what I was saying,
Right.
because I couldn't work out how to describe it, because I was essentially talking about a blue car, but my mum and dad are saying it's a red car. And it's that much of a combat that you're like, no, but to me it's blue, and I'm trying to explain to you that, okay, you see it as red, but I see it as blue, and it's okay, and I don't know why I see it as blue, and it really annoys me that I can't see it as red. I'm trying, and I don't understand why I don't see it as red, but I see it as blue. And that therapist is like, okay, so you're disagreeing, and so if someone says something, you're automatically, are you maybe combative? And I'm like, no, I'm just trying to explain that I don't understand why my brain's not working how it should.
Yeah.
Whereas then when I got the ADHD diagnosis, suddenly I was like, that's why I see it as blue.
Yeah.
So then when my parents were talking, actually sometimes it would be really interesting, because I was presuming they were seeing it as red, but actually they were seeing it as turquoise. That does not make sense to anyone who's not ADHD.
No.
But to me that makes perfect sense.
So you thinking back to your teaching career then, it sounds like the early days, you've done well to get through that. You've got your degree and then you're in the world of teaching. What was that world like now, looking back on it?
So at the end of my probation year, there wasn't a lot of jobs. And what's interesting is
How long ago are we talking?
So this would have been 12 years ago,
Right.
I think, end of my probation year. Interestingly enough, my current head teacher was in the interview panel. I didn't get one of the jobs, so I went to Dubai for 2 years. And that was a whole other, I don't know how I wasn't diagnosed, right? So I did not do any research before going. It was just a friend was going to Dubai.
That.
Yeah. It was sunny. It was nice. And I was like, okay. So,
Why Dubai?
because my friend was going, and it was the first place on Google.
Of course.
It was literally, there was no thought into it, no thought into the school, which meant I didn't go to your kind of typical international school where a lot of teachers would go after their probation and get a really amazing experience and become better teachers. No, I went to a local Arabic school. That's when the money stuff all started, because that's when I'd started having to manage my own money. So that's...
And I'm guessing you're really good with money.
I'm amazing with money.
Spending it.
I'm so good at spending it.
Right.
I'm really bad at saving it. I'm good at receiving it and spending it.
Right.
Yeah, basically. So that was then really, But then the school that I'm in now, one of the teachers went off on maternity leave, and I had started to put feelers out. I'd lost myself. I was depressed as anything in Dubai. I hated it. It was you've got to look perfect, and it was like influencers, social media, and that's not me. I can't be bothered with
What
that.
about the heat?
The heat was fine.
You don't bother with it?
I wasn't bothered. I didn't go to the beach. I hate sand and I hate the sea. So, but all it is to do is drink and eat and shop. So you put on your weight, feel worse about yourself. Then you have to get your fake tan on and your extensions and your nails. And then it was just too much. I hated it. So I started to put feelers out for coming home. And a girl that I'd went to primary school with reached out and said, oh, the school I'm in just now needs someone. They can't get anyone. Here's the head teacher's email address. So that was it. Emailed her. And this was like the February. And I was like, okay, well, I can hand in my notice here. I'll be home at Easter. So that was it. Got off the plane, straight into my current school, and I've been there since.
Same job? Same school?
Yeah.
Many years is that?
This is me 11 years in this school.
Right.
Yeah.
You must be doing something right. They've kept you on.
I have to say, I must be a decent teacher, because I have given my head teacher such a hard time.
Right.
Like, she could have had me out the door so many times.
As I said to you before we come on camera, that we see lots of teachers with ADHD, and they generally are the best at teaching, on their feet, doing their stuff, engaging children, helping them achieve results in life. But what they struggle with is, well, it's the same for everybody with ADHD, what they struggle with is all the other things that every neurotypical teacher finds really easy. Tell me about that, how that goes for you.
So I find...
Prepping.
Personally, yeah. So the preparation, right? I am amazing at sitting and getting into the zone when my body allows me to get in the zone. And when my body allows me to get in the zone, I can sit out in the open area and have 3 classes playing about me. In the sand, in the water, construction, playing schools, babies, whatever. Fighting. Other teachers doing all this. And I will be like, okay, so I need to get this resource. And like, they could come up and talk to me, and they're not there. I don't hear. I'm literally, it's white noise. Other times, when it's like, this is your NCC time, your non-class time to do your prep, especially now since diagnosis, I'm like, right, this is the time I've got to do my planning. My brain just goes.
Right.
Planning, for me, the ADHD, I am incredibly creative, right? So my plans are like, I will have the most amazing lessons planned, unreal.
Where are those plans?
Great ideas. Those plans are on my desk.
Excellent.
Right? I am anal with this. But I have to be. I've learned that I have to be, because if I don't think of A, B, C, D and E, and something goes wrong, I fall apart. And I can't do that to my kids.
Right.
So what I've found is neurotypical teachers will literally write like, right, okay, maths, we're doing division, I'll do that textbook page. If that was my plan, or when I was covering classes, if I walked into a class and that's what I was met with, that's when I would panic, I would feel sick, worry, I would cry, I would have just a really bad day. So I literally have to have plans to the nth degree, right down to a PowerPoint with the date, the week, the day that we're on, the welcome, my expectation of how they move about the classroom, the different stations I've set up, because, I can't just have them doing a textbook page. I've got to have them doing games and doing songs and doing this and doing that. I've got all of this up there on the board, not just on my planner, because if it's just in my planner, I'm going to forget to read it or lose track. I need to have it in the PowerPoint, so that during my lesson I can go, oh crap, I forgot to do that, or that still needs to happen, and but it's taken how many years to get here. So I almost have to over-plan. Like, I need to write a book when most people would write a post-it note. It's exhausting.
Mate, I'm actually exhausted just listening to that. Because I think that's one of the things that, people who are observing you, they're not seeing that.
No. They're just coming in and seeing a lesson, right? Which, when someone's coming in and observing me, will probably go tits up. I don't think I've ever had a good observation. Whereas I'll have so many amazing lessons and I'll be like, I wish that was an observation. if that was an observation, oh, people would know what I'm talking about when I say we have these magic moments. And I'll try and recreate that for an observation, and I'll look like the worst teacher ever. Right. And it's just because somebody's there.
So would it be fair to say then that you've found a way of doing it? You've got your own systems, your own approach to making sure your teaching goes the way that you want it to?
Yeah, definitely, because I find when I get really overwhelmed, or if something's happened in my life that I'm emotional or whatever, it's very strange, but I can almost go into like a mutism.
Yeah. Find that hard to believe, but yeah.
I know, I've done it my whole life, but never knew that's what it was, where it's literally like, if I open my mouth to speak right now, I'm literally going to fall apart, or rage, or the world's going to fall apart. Or other times I'll want to speak, but I literally physically can't.
Right.
And that's the new one that's happened since diagnosis.
But is that an example of where there's so much or too much overwhelm it could shut you down?
Totally, that's what it is. But I feel like I don't recognise having that before diagnosis.
Right.
That's almost been like a skill regression thing. So things in school, it could be that I've maybe heard at playtime that something's changed.
Right.
A class is being cancelled, or primary 1 have got to do this, but I'm primary 3, so it really shouldn't affect me, but that's enough to trigger my anger, fear, upset, anything. So then when I go back into class, if I hadn't had all of these eventualities planned, my kids would have no experience, they wouldn't have a positive experience, because I would just melt, because that's when I'd literally go into the I want to speak. And it's the strangest feeling. It's as if there's just something stopping it. But that's where my PowerPoint helps me, because I literally have almost my sentence starters on there. Yeah. And I'll look at it and I'll say, that's what I have to start saying. And it gets me into that flow again.
You've kind of touched on what can be for some people is maybe one of the downsides of being assessed and diagnosed with ADHD. Now, we don't routinely refer to ADHD in the medical model, because maybe it doesn't give a true representation of what it actually is. Probably more sort of social model would be more representative. But if we use a medical model just, for this example, people with ADHD, when you have ADHD all your life and you're very unwell with your ADHD, but you didn't know it was ADHD, right? You then get an assessment and you have the diagnosis confirmed. For many people at that point, it's only then that they realise how unwell they've been in life. And when they have that level of insight and awareness now of what it actually is, they're much more mindful of what it can be and how it might impact on them. And because you overthink things anyway, it can make you vulnerable to what you've just described.
I found, I was going through a pretty vicious cycle where yearly there was something going on that my health would just take a tanking, to the extent that it was like major IBS symptoms, and I was hospitalised a few times, had an operation, and this was all since coming home from Dubai. In Dubai, it was real what I thought was like depression. And I remember there was one year where I just was off because I was so burnt out. I didn't know it was burnout, but I just was like, I couldn't fathom going to work. I couldn't fathom doing anything. The thing I used to think was, I wish I could just like really break my leg, because then like there's an excuse to be this tired and I can just sit on the couch, no one's going to bother me. Or if I'm in a car accident and it's like just enough that I need to go into hospital and I can sleep for a week, and that's allowed, nobody's going to judge me for that. But like I don't actually want to hurt myself. Like, I love life, but like I would just really love a week of like not existing and nobody talking to me. Those kind of thoughts were happening. And
did any of that stuff happen?
No. Well, when I ended up having to have an operation for my IBS, that week in hospital was, I tell you, it's not actually the jolly you think it's going to be even when you sleep for a week. But that was actually, interestingly, when I first went to the doctors and their immediate reaction was, I think it was like sertraline or something. And I remember coming and speaking to you that night, and you were almost like, that's not what it is, darling. And it was like backstage, you had me diagnosed in like 15 minutes. But that was the first I'd ever heard of ADHD. I didn't know it was a thing, even though I was a teacher. I'd always heard of like dyslexia, dyspraxia was more talked about, autism, ADHD even then, you know, and that was only, 2008 maybe, wasn't something we were told about as teachers.
No, and I think that we've spoken as many times even today that there's so much positive discrimination that if you are someone who presents well, who's articulate, who's intelligent, who seems to hold down a good job, who seems to be functioning, then even your own brain is not going to take you to the idea that this is something that you might have.
Yeah.
And society in itself doesn't recognise you as someone as having what we now know as ADHD because it's always the super hyperactive, highly impulsive, badly behaved boy.
Yep.
Which you're not.
No, that's where, believe it or not, I am probably one of the only people, apart from other ADHD people, that was so thankful for lockdown.
Yeah.
COVID is what changed my life because everyone else was complaining and hating lockdown, and I loved it. I was able to watch whatever I wanted on telly. I didn't have to get dressed, and nobody was going to come at my door because you weren't allowed to. You know? So nobody was going to find out that I was a lazy slob with a messy house just watching the telly, cuddling my cats.
Did you know how common that is with people with ADHD?
Now I know.
People would come here and I would sit and I would think, it must have been really difficult for you in lockdown. And they would say, loved it, best time of my life.
Best time of my life.
You can't say that.
No, best time of my life. Best time of my life. To the extent that then having to go back to work, that's when I started to realise there's something with me. Not everybody is like this. But up to then, how do you know you've got something that no one else has? How do you know that you see things differently? You don't. COVID did it for me because everyone else was like, yay, back to business, yay, back to the pubs, back to this, back to work. Whereas I was like exhausted beyond exhaustion.
Right.
I couldn't plan for school the way I used to. I couldn't do things that were just normal. And now I know that was actually, I was having to mask again. But because you don't consciously mask when you don't know your ADHD. Yes, you're people pleasing and trying really hard, but you don't know that's masking. COVID, you then don't realise that you're not masking until you have to go back to work, and suddenly you can't just wear your pyjamas and your trainers. You have to actually put makeup on and get dressed and go and hold conversations with people, and you can't just be like, I can't be bothered talking to you anymore, right, bye, the way you would on Zoom. And then even teaching in COVID was incredibly different because it all had to be online, PowerPoint based. We weren't talking to the children. So I was making videos, and that's where my creativity really started to come out even more because I'd be like editing videos of me doing science lessons and really cool things that I would never get a chance to do in class. You know, thinking then of ways, how do I teach multiplication when a child, I can't just give them a PowerPoint, so I would make videos of me, you know, putting cups and straws together and talking through it, you know, and that's when I started to realise that my brain's working differently to everyone else in my school, apart from my then stage partner, who's Asperger's. And then my best friend, who is like totally undiagnosed, and actually like her family had diagnoses. It's like we're a strong three, and it's like, how on earth did I not know I was ADHD when they two are my pals?
So what other chance conversation with me and the conversation with your friends, what actually triggered you? I'm going to go and get this.
So what happened was, it was kind of my first class after the kind of whole COVID thing. So we weren't having lockdowns anymore. So it would have been like maybe 2001, it would have been about 2002, maybe 2003. And I had a particularly challenging pupil. And it was like every day was violence.
Right.
You know, being kicked, slapped, bitten. And one day I was kicked in my shoulder, which I already had a really bad shoulder. We thought it was an instability. Now we know it's like tendonitis and tension due to hypermobility. Hello, ADHD. It's like, but the way it just so happened, the angle, because he was up on the table and the way he kicked me, it just got me good, that it was really sore. And that was normal, you know, and I remember having to go to what we have as our little nurture space and the nurture teacher just to cry, because I was like, I can't do this, I'm done, I can't do this anymore. And then that was like a Friday. I had to go back into class that afternoon after the kids had saw me literally in that pain. So that was embarrassing. So that whole weekend, I just wasn't really thinking.
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't. It's almost like it was like an out of body experience that whole weekend, that I ended up giving myself concussion by accident going up to my loft and texting my boss saying I can't come in, so I've given myself concussion, was when I felt good about that, and I started talking to my family. My big brother was up from London, and I shared how I feel about sometimes a car accident and all that. And it was only when my sister-in-law was like, that's not normal. And my brother and my sister-in-law didn't want to go back down to London because they were worried I was going to do something.
Yeah.
That I realised how unwell I was. Sorry, this bit's quite hard. So that's when I realised actually how unwell I was. And that trying to fit in and be what everyone else can do, and that I can't, was so exhausting that I just broke, and I had a complete nervous breakdown, and I was off work for a good 4 months. And that's when I was allocated a CPN, and it was only then through those kind of discussions that my CPN was like, this is deep, you know. And that's when I was like, you know, what's interesting is I have had a friend before say about something called ADHD. Could that be why my medication's not working? Am I on the wrong medication? And she was like, ADHD? Why do you think that? And I was like, I've got a really good friend who actually is like, he's like a specialist in it, and he just was like laughing, like, yeah, you're ADHD, of course you are. And that's when she was like, oh, okay, do you know what we'll do? We'll get the forms. So when the forms then came, and I'm doing them with my CPN, she was like, okay. And that was it. A few months later, a few months later, I was then in with psychiatrists and everything, but within a year, diagnosed.
It's good that you were seen quicker, but obviously we wouldn't encourage other folk to take that route.
No. That was the darkest period of my life. And
I can imagine.
While now I'm better and have a reason and look back on that, it's strange that you can't help but be like, right, okay, that happened for this reason, but wow, like, it terrifies me what could have happened. And I'm still embarrassed of it.
You're not alone, though. And I think having done this forever, there's so many people, and I think women in particular are probably a bit better. I'm going to get hammered for this, but a bit better at, you know, telling people what it's like for them and explaining what they're struggling with. And I think for a lot of women in those instances, they will find themselves leaving the appointment with an antidepressant, and that may help some of the symptoms at that time, but it's the underlying problem. Yeah. And where you're very similar to many people is you reach a crossroads in life, and that crossroads is the crisis that you've described. And that can, you know, that could bury a lot of people, that could, you know, drown people. But for you, you know, you had, you know, the wherewithal to be able to tell people this is what it's like for me, and I think there's a lot of luck involved in it.
There was so much luck. But I think that's why I'm such an advocate now, and I talk about it so much in school, which is also not what a lot of people do. You know, I'm part of the forums on Facebook of like ADHD teachers, and there was actually a post yesterday of like, my boss has said, you know, I should maybe talk to my colleagues and tell my colleagues, because then my boss can explain. I can explain why I've got all these adjustments. And I'm like, I had my colleagues told through this whole thing, because if my story stops somebody from going into the absolute, I could have lost my life.
Yeah.
And I'm sorry, but I'm amazing. Life without me, people wouldn't have had like that, right?
Exactly.
I bring something to this world. And the thought that I was in such a dark place and had such little understanding of myself that things could be different is terrifying enough that I'm a huge advocate. And I think it's so important to talk about ADHD, especially in undiagnosed women of my age, because how many people have to hit a crisis to then be recognised, rather than just you're depressed. Because that's what I was told, it's depression. And I was like, but I don't feel sad. And that's what depression is. I don't get this. And it was like, how can you describe how you feel when you don't know how you feel isn't normal?
Yeah.
And it was only then when, you know, talking to my mum or talking to my CPN and things getting raised, that I'd be like, yeah, well, I would say something I think's obvious. And they were like, no. That then it started to become really obvious that my mind works in a different way.
Yeah.
And that then having that validation was, well, I'm not broken and I'm not depressed. I'm tired and burnt out from living in a society that's not built for me. I'm exhausted. I would have gone 32 years
Yeah.
essentially swimming against the tide. And that is exhausting. And the difference now, knowing that I'm ADHD and talking about it, I tell my colleagues, I tell my boss, I tell the kids. But I've been told not to. The amount of times I'm told you shouldn't be telling the children that. I'm like, why not? It's good for the children to know, and I find it's made me a much better teacher, because now I understand that the things I thought were just normal are actually challenges I've had, that I've worked out ways to deal with those challenges that I can then share that with the other children.
And how, so that's really important. I think that's huge, that as a teacher who has that knowledge about themselves, that level of insight and awareness about ADHD, the condition, how does that then inform your teaching practice when you know so many of those kids who are in front of you have undiagnosed ADHD?
This is where I get quite incredibly controversial, in that I think the school system does not meet the needs of these learners. And now being diagnosed myself, I very much don't see it that I'm like the odd one out. I just see it as my brain's different. How many other people out there are their brains different, they just don't know. And that's when I think, especially in this surge of diagnosis, it's like, what if actually it's a 50-50? 50 people are 50% are neurotypical and 50% are neurodiverse. Why is everything just catered for that? And it's like, almost because it wasn't diagnosed and it wasn't a thing, it didn't exist. Like, no, we've just had all these people struggle through this system. And now, looking at how I struggled through the system and what I found difficult, when I see it in my class, I very much, it's hard, because you see a lot of adjustments made for children that I think actually is maybe doing them a disservice.
What have you done then for them that you think, because you're describing very clearly a different learning style?
Yeah, so for me, for example, you know, last year in P7, 2 years ago, sorry, P7, there was an area just outside the classrooms, a few tables, there was a wee library, and that was a corridor that, you know, people aren't going to use that for learning or whatever, but very often I would just be like, yeah, you can go out if you want. And they were out there on their own, there was no teacher with them, but that's where they wanted to go and do their work. And I was like, yeah, because I don't see why not. But then having to explain why I thought that was a good idea, it was like, well, they asked, so that's where they're more comfortable.
Yeah.
So, okay, I'm not hanging over them, but if they need me, they'll come and ask me. And so there was children a lot of the time who would choose to do that, or one child actually was quite funny. I remember his older brother, and I'd never met this boy, and he came up to me one of the first days. He was like, you might not like me. And I was like, what? Why? Well, I'm actually autistic, you should know that, so you might not like me. And I was like, well, guess what? It's like, I'm ADHD, so I'm going to love you. He literally, that whole year, wanted to stay in at playtimes and lunchtimes and talk to me. Found out he liked Titanic, so I gave him one of my Titanic books. He loved Lord of the Rings. So
Many
we talked
Titanic
about
books
Lord
you
of the Rings. I've got a lot. That was one of my hyper focuses as a child. talked about Lord of the Rings. I'm obviously obsessed with Lord of the Rings. I've got tattoos and everything. And what was really nice was I then got spoken to of you shouldn't be telling the children. But then actually I was so glad I told him, because his mum said to his teacher, oh, I've heard, about Miss Lockhead, and he just loves talking. He just loves coming to school, and he just loves being in her class when she's in, because, she just gets him.
Yeah.
And that's when I was like, oh my gosh, that child finally has a favourite teacher he never had before, and now he does. That means so much.
It means so much, but I think what you've done is you've kind of broken down what was essentially a barrier to teaching and learning, and you've almost been a kind of conduit there for this young person to learn and engage in education that maybe otherwise he would have disengaged.
I very much see it as, or how my approach to teaching is, I'm fed up that the teacher has to be held in this regard.
Yeah.
And, teachers can't have tattoos, teachers can't have piercings, teachers can't go out at the weekend, teachers can't be this, can't be that, right? Which is where I am controversial, and I must be a head teacher's nightmare, because I'm like, well, no, I'm going to come out of school with my pink hair, my purple hair, my orange hair, and my piercings and tattoos, because that's me. And I'm the same with kids. And I find that actually, like this year, for example, how that made me a better teacher was because the open dialogue. Like, I would tell a child, oh yeah, I was rubbish at this at school, I can't do that. My kids will know I failed maths. Whereas, what other teacher will tell a child, oh yeah, I've failed that, like that exam I was bad at, rather than, oh no, I'm amazing at everything. I was like, oh no, I failed that. So then when a child finds something in maths, I go, yeah, I find that really hard as well, so listen, this is one of the tricks I do. Or, I'll be honest with you, I'm an adult, I've actually never had to use that piece of maths, but I did need to use this process that you need to learn, so let's sack off that bit and just focus on this bit. Because this is the bit that you do need as an adult, and it's really, and I'll have those chats with them. I'll also, when I'm teaching, see, because like place value, for example, when you're like doing subtraction, carrying and borrowing, that concept to a child, I remember learning that, trying to learn that in primary school, of like, you carry your one.
I never learned that.
Yeah, it's like, it makes no sense, right? Like, and then if you asked, you would go, you just do it, that's just what you do. Whereas I now know that the reason I'm like, no, I want the why, is because I'm ADHD, so I give my children the why. And I do that through, like, I used to do like panto sketches. So for borrowing, if it was a takeaway, I'll be like, oh, right, Jimmy's come to the door and with his pals, and I'm going to give them Christmas cards. There's 5 of them, but I've only got 2 Christmas cards. I've not got enough. And I would start putting on the voice, and I'd be like, right, do you know what? I'm going into Shuggy's house next door. All right, Shuggy, can I borrow 5 Christmas cards? Can I borrow Christmas cards? I've not got enough. Aye, I've only got a pack of 10. Just take the pack of 10. All right, okay, so here's my 2 Christmas cards, and he just gave me a pack of 10. How many have I got now? Oh, I've got 12. Have I got enough Christmas cards now for Johnny at the door? Aye, I do. Right, how many Christmas cards have I got left? And I made it a story explaining why you had to go next door to ask, and why they only gave you a pack of 10. And it wasn't they gave you 1 and you carried the 1. It was, no, they gave you a pack of 10 Christmas cards. And it was like stories like that. Or, oh, I'm having a birthday party, but I'm only allowed 9 friends, and 11 of them have turned up to the house. But do you know what? Next door are having a Halloween party, but guess what? They only are letting groups of 10. You can either be a caterpillar as a 10, or you can be a really tall man and you're all up together and all that kind of thing. So, right, 10 of you can join together and make a costume and go next door, and the rest of you can stay with me in my party. And that's how it explains carrying the 10. Silly things like that, because I need to see it for it to be real.
I'm thinking aloud here that it sounds like understanding yourself, your neurodiversity, that has helped you become a better teacher for children who are similar.
Yeah. And actually what's really interesting as well is we've been looking at something called the Circle document. I don't know if you've heard about that, for a Circle classroom. And it's
I've heard of the Circle of Life from The Lion King. Is it the same?
Circle of Life. It should be the same. But it's basically like your inclusive classroom does no harm to children who don't need it.
Yeah.
So why not still teach the way I teach? It really home in on the children that need it, but see, the children that don't need it doesn't no harm anyway.
Right.
So it's that kind of mindset. And it's then looking even in my classroom of, you know, the things in the walls. A lot of time it's about displaying your work and stuff, but actually how I've changed is, right, what hints do you need? What clues do you need? What are you forgetting? Right, you're forgetting that this is where an apostrophe goes, so I'm going to stick it up on the wall until you know it.
Yeah.
Because it's just there. Just silly things like that, because I know, like, you need reminders, you need alarms.
No, well, let me just correct you there, Miss Lockhead.
Uh-oh.
You say, because that's a very neurodiverse thing where it's silly things, it's just a wee thing. But remember, silly things or wee things are actually huge things in the world of ADHD and autism.
That's true.
And so that might look like a wee thing to somebody who's neurotypical, but for somebody who's neurodiverse, that's a wow, that is amazing.
Yeah. It's true, because it's the same ways in our needs, isn't it? Like when we were talking earlier about toothbrushing, even just talking about it and you making the movement, I've started to feel completely overwhelmed. But to neurotypical people, that's just brushing your teeth.
Just
you do that every day. Why is that an issue? Whereas for me, it's literally like I know I need to set an alarm.
Yeah.
I need someone to say to me, have you brushed your teeth today?
So
silly things like that.
So let's move on to something you and I both have in common. Jennifer and I we're actually professional actors, yes.
We are. Oh, my mic's moved.
We've been in a number of movies together. No, we do our acting with our local theatre group, the Kirkintilloch Players.
Go and buy tickets. We've got music from the movies coming up.
Music from the movies. And I've been in Kirkintilloch Players for, 12 years now, and all my kids are, musical, acting, drama, writing, they're all in there. And what I was struck by in the Kirkintilloch Players is the number of people that I would kind of clock and go, oh, hello, you look like I would say this to myself, you're kind of look like you're neurodiverse.
How funny is it that we now do the knowing glances together? When someone will say something, me and you will go, like, check who's undiagnosed.
But I think it's true that people, and you mentioned about your creativity, your imagination, that's probably a strength for people in the arts world. How have you found it? And I was talking to you about learning lines. How have you found, being neurodiverse? How has it influenced your performing when you're doing plays or panto?
One of the things that I didn't realise I struggle with is socialising, right? Socialising, I find it exhausting. I can say things you're not supposed to say because I don't know how to read a room too much, loads of this kind of thing. Whereas actually a drama club is like a structured communication. So what was interesting, especially when I was putting into my application recently for the ADP stuff, it was like saying that drama club gives me a chance to socialise because it's a safe socialising zone. We all have a common goal. If you have nothing to talk about, you can talk about your costume. You can talk about, if you learned your lines. There's always something that if you find communication difficult, exhausting, it's a safe, structured thing, So in that sense, that's why I love Kirky Players. But beyond that, I just find it's a chance to, it sounds crazy, right? But now I know I've masked my whole life, to mask but in a really fun, exciting way.
Yeah.
So it's like actually acting is essentially what I do every single day, whether I put on my teacher face, whether I put on my Kirky Player face, whether I put on my going to my granny's face, of the things you're allowed to do. So it's a safe place to go and do that and be dead creative and just nuts. And we're all absolutely barmy in that place.
I'm not.
Like, yes, you are, don't even start. The conversations we have, the costumes you put on, it is just a chance to laugh at yourself and laugh at others in a really safe place.
I suppose that, because the word we've used maybe repeatedly today, or what's used all the time, the word is masking. If you replace the word with masking with acting,
it makes more sense.
Then what we're doing when we're doing that stuff, we're acting, but it's more effortless than all the other stuff.
And it's socially acceptable because you're acting, because you're in a play.
Yeah.
So it's like plays with your mind a wee bit. It's like a place for you to be what you need to be in a place that's accepted and encouraged by everyone
Yeah.
and society.
Yeah.
That sounds weird.
And I suppose because we see tons of folk who are like, not that we are not professional, but we see people
so
that's their career. And when I talk to them about it, it's almost like it's not really work for them because it's interesting, it lights up their brain. It's that safe space that you talk about.
That's it. You've got the lights, the colours, the costumes, the songs, everything. It's like nothing's the same.
Yeah.
So you totally are like, green flag. Wow, this is amazing. It's just magical.
Yeah.
But what's interesting as well is even like as a teacher doing cricket players or even as a learner when I was doing it, I used to be really bad at English. You know, can't spell, handwriting's atrocious, can't write for the life of me. But through getting into drama and in cricket players, we obviously have, you know, differences you can do like plays and as a child you're kind of raised in a diet of musicals. But one of the other options is the one act play where you go, it's a competition, you put on a wee play and you've got an adjudicator who will stand up and tell you what you did well about your play and what was shockingly rubbish. And everyone goes, oh, you were robbed. I thought you were amazing. We were robbed. We've been robbed a few times.
Yes.
But actually that's what made me really good at then English in high school because it was that showed me that, you know how when you would say, oh, in this poem there's a red door. That red door is because they're angry and lost and you know, all that pure fanny language. You learn that off the adjudicator. And you learn that when someone chooses a certain light or a certain... So then when I was reading, you know, your Macbeth or whatever, which is mind-numbingly dull for your hire, I was able to pick out the cheesy stuff that they want in your answers.
Yeah.
I don't actually think it. You know, I didn't actually think that was his ghost haunting him from his past. But that's the stuff you learn from being a thespian, which is how I was able to then go from being terrible at English to getting a really good hire.
Yeah.
So actually acting's a really good way for learners to not only get their self-esteem and their confidence and their social interaction, it's taught me to read because I don't have the concentration to read a book, but I will read a play.
Yeah.
Because you
have to.
suddenly have to. Or, you know, you're rehearsing it, so you're watching it as you're reading it.
Yeah.
And suddenly it makes sense.
Yeah.
And it just made me a whole lot better at understanding the words. And now I'm obsessed with being all that creative side because of cricket players.
So anyone who is neurodiverse will find themselves very welcome in any of their local theatre groups. So you should get yourself along and join them.
Totally should.
And if you're in Glasgow or thereabouts, East Dunbartonshire, come along to the Kirk and Toilet Players.
Yes.
Right. You have been amazing, Jennifer.
I don't even know what I've said.
I'll let you know in due course. But you've been amazing. I think you've given us a real, you know, true insight into, you know, your life through your own eyes. You know, how this life has unfolded for you, what's been difficult for you, all the obstacles that have been in the way for you, the highs, the lows, how you've managed to overcome some of this stuff and come out the other end and probably be better for it, actually.
Oh, absolutely. I would say I love my life now.
Yeah.
I love who I am. I love my life. I love my quirks. The negatives, you'll still get them.
Yeah.
They don't just disappear with diagnosis and treatment. That's, you know, you can't put yourself under this false sense of it goes away and everything's sorted. It's not. You still get those negatives. But the difference now is I no longer hate myself for those negatives because I know that those negatives are normal in a circle.
Yeah.
So I don't feel so isolated and everything. One thing I do want to add as well, though, before we wrap up is...
She did say it would be difficult for me to get.
Sorry. Is in schools especially, I wish, going forward in the future, there be more training for the new understanding what to expect for autism and ADHD. For both teachers teaching learners, but also employers
Yeah.
across Scotland
Yeah.
with employees, because there's now such a rise in women, older women, but still I see it in school that girls aren't displaying how you would expect them to display. So you'll kind of go, there's a wee something there, and someone go, oh no, they're just young. But in schools, there needs to be more up-to-date training for teachers
Yeah.
and for head teachers of managing employees, because it's actually not fair. You know, I think of my poor head teacher, how much she's really worked to support me. And it's just been a blind place for her. You know, the support out there for how she can support me. And I know that I'm still at times difficult. I can appear confrontational and everything because I'm so passionate. And I'm just so lucky that I've got someone who is completely open to learning from me how to move forward. But I do just think, I look at a lot of my colleagues, people across the profession, head teachers, and I just think, it's actually just not fair on you guys that you aren't getting the support you need to support this.
Well, hopefully, you know, training will become more readily available, so that, you know, teachers who are out there to do their best by children will be on a level playing field with the right support and input. Right, Jennifer, I need to wrap you up.
That's it. I've talked far too much. I knew I would.
So that was Jennifer, and I'm sure you'll agree that that was a real in-depth insight into the world of a teacher who has ADHD, how her ADHD has presented her with challenges over the years, where it's probably contributed to her being, you know, at a low ebb at points in her life, how she's sort of bounced back and galvanised herself, found a way to navigate the world of ADHD and be in a place at this point in time where she's happy. The diagnosis itself has been almost cathartic in itself for Jennifer, or just the realisation that, you know, up until this point she's not been on a level playing field, and it's not been her fault for some of the things that have not gone her way. And I think that has allowed her to appreciate herself more, and also to recognise that she has got so much to offer and contribute to society, let alone the pupils that she teaches. It's also interesting just to get that bit of an insight into what it's like in the world of theatre that her and I both have an interest in. Pretty convinced it's full of people who are neurodiverse, because we see people, well, we see lots of people in the arts industry who have ADHD because they gravitate towards that because of their ADHD. And like the lawnmower to begin with, we end the show with a siren. And ask for anything else. So I hope you enjoyed that episode. I hope it gave you a good insight into the world of being a teacher who has ADHD and how she manages her symptoms and brings out the best in her pupils at the same time. And I hope to catch you guys up fairly soon. If you found this content of any use at all, it'd be great if you just click the like button. And if you'd like to hear more sirens and lawnmowers in the background, then why don't you just subscribe? Until the next time, see ya.